Alright, today's video is about World of Warplanes. Now, if you've never played World of Warplanes, basically it's a flight simulator that covers from World War One to the Korean War. And I usually fly drones, and most of my videos are about drone flying, but every once in a while I'll find a game that kind of hooks me in. And for the past week, I've been playing World of Warplanes. And it's essentially, you can fly in basically whatever era you want to fly in. For instance, when you first start flying, you're going to be in Tier 1 aircraft, which are biplanes. And then as you gain experience and currency, you can move up to Tier 2. Tier 2 moves you into kind of early World War II aircraft, sort of pre-World War II aircraft. Tier 3 gets you fully into World War II. Tier 4, 5, and 6, I believe, are all World War II. And then you start getting the introduction of jet aircraft, which showed up at the very tail end of World War II, and then you move into Korean War jet fighters. So, besides the different tiers, you have different types of aircraft available as you move up in tiers. And depending on which tech tree you go, you can move into higher grades of the type of airplane that you want to fly. So basically, you got three types of airplanes. You've got fighters, which is what I'm in right now. I'm in a Spitfire 1, which is a Tier 5 aircraft. And then you move up to, or not move up to, but you have the option of going into heavy fighters. Now, heavy fighters are twin-engined aircraft. They're bigger, they carry bombs, sometimes rockets, and so they have a ground attack role open to them, as well as generally being capable of delivering a lot of forward firepower controlled by you, as well as having at least one automated turret. So having a AI controlled turret is nice. It's not going to get you a lot of kills, but just that little extra damage when you have an aircraft on your tail comes in really handy. So generally I prefer flying the bow fighter, which is a heavy fighter, and it's not quite classified as a bomber because it doesn't have enough of a payload to really be called a bomber, but it's very effective at shooting down bombers and other heavy fighters, as they call them. So the Spitfire, its best ability to me is its turning maneuverability and its cannon. If you fly American fighters, you're mainly going to get lots, usually 6 50 caliber Browning machine guns. And machine guns will get the job done in this game, but generally you want to fly planes that have cannons, and that's why I chose the Spitfire. Generally, in all war simulators, the European and Japanese aircraft are going to fighters, I should say, are always going to have cannons equipped, while American airplanes are almost entirely made up of 50 caliber machine guns for armament. Cannons have a much longer range compared to machine guns. It's like double the range, and that makes a huge difference, and you also do a lot more damage per shot. The only downside to cannons is they tend to overheat, but it's good to start getting damage in from a distance, and then as you pull up close, finishing it off with your machine guns. The downside to the Spitfire and other fighters of this type is they can't take very many hits, where a heavy fighter can absorb a ton of damage. The light fighters like the Spitfire, Mustang, the ME-109, the Focke-Wulf 190, the classic fighters of World War II, generally can't take as much damage. It's really going to depend on your flying style and how you want to fly. Now, what this replay doesn't show is how much I'm zooming in. There is a zoom feature on here, which is a bit video gamey, and this isn't a strict sim. This is a very video gaming type of flying experience. And it has a zoom feature, so maybe as you're watching it doesn't look like the crosshairs are right on the targets I'm hitting, but that's really just because I'm using the zoom feature that doesn't show in the replay, and that's really handy for long distance shooting. And generally in this game, always, if you have a shot, take it. Even if it's a short burst, you never know. It might cause a critical and finish off the target, or you'll at least get an assist on a kill. So I'm very opportunistic when I play. I don't like necessarily always line up for the most perfect angle, but the Spitfire is so maneuverable. You can get yourself out of a lot of trouble, and it does seem to be able to outturn a lot of fighters of the same type. So where if you're in a heavy fighter, if you start getting into one of these turning contests, you're going to lose every time. You want to get, you have to be a little bit more careful in your positioning. The biggest upshot to the Spitfire, in my opinion, is by far its maneuverability and its climbing rate. So if you're down low and you see a bomber way up high, you can get up there in a relatively short period of time. In this particular battle, there was probably maybe 6 or 8 actual players. The rest are AI controlled. Like when you see a plane start doing a lot of barrel rolls, that usually means it's AI controlled. Players generally don't fly in that manner. Usually when a player knows you target them, they're either going to start turning as sharp as they can. They might go into a dive to pick up a little bit of airspeed. They might fly back towards one of their own captured areas to try and lure you into the aircraft, anti-aircraft fire. These bombers right here, this whole wing of bombers is entirely made up of AI. If you capture an airfield, it will periodically send a whole wing of bombers over to a captured area by the opposing team and drop bombs on them. So you get a lot of points by just intercepting these bombers. They're easy kills. You know what? A lot easier kills in heavy fighter because your guns don't overheat as quickly. But you can get it done in the Spitfire, no problem. Any kind of fighter plane will work for it. But generally, because these bombers have turrets, it's usually a better idea to kind of leave it up to other players who are better equipped to attack those type of planes, or just being a heavy fighter if you're planning on intercepting bombers. But as you can see, a regular fighter can get it done. And just so you know, this whole replay was sped up a little bit, so it's not going to be as quickly executed in the actual game as it is here. Like this entire battle was like, I think it was like 12 minutes, and I shaved about a minute and a half off by speeding it up. Apart from that, I mean, it's just been a really addictive game for me. Like I had heard about World of Warplanes, and everybody's heard of World of Tanks. World of Warships is pretty popular too. Generally, it seems like flying and flight simulators never get as much traction and popularity as like the tanks and the warships games, but because I love flying, this is definitely much more suited to what I'm into when I'm gaming. The replay kind of glitched right here. Not sure what the deal was, but it'll line up here. Yeah, there it is. And what's really cool is that you don't have to fly, like I'm at pretty high altitude right here. This is basically bomber altitude. But you can fly really low. I mean, some of the fur walls that people get into, the dogfights, are just at low altitude are awesome. Because, you know, you can use the environment, like mountains, valleys, the terrain to kind of fly like really, really close proximity. And just some really dynamic fighting happens at low altitude. But generally I find, because of the nature of these aircraft, being prop driven and whatnot, generally you want to get yourself at around 900, I think I'm at 1,500 meters, which is a bit high. Generally around 1,100, 1,200 is kind of the sweet spot, because it lets you get in position to take down high altitude bombers or dive in on low level fighters involved in the dogfight. Sometimes, now how you play is kind of like, you know, just depends on your personal style. Like I said, I'm more opportunistic. I just go for you know, the the best opportunity that arrives. But sometimes you might just find another player and play their wingman, follow them around. Um, you know, try to help out if they get somebody on their tail. That's kind of the fun part of the game. Is there's different ways of playing it. Even if you're just playing solo, you can kind of work as a team to get stuff done. But anyway, that's all I got. Fun game. Definitely recommend it if you're a pilot or just like to fly.